Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to a very special session entitled Our Humanity, Our Future, a celebration of a year with Dr. Mamphela Ramphele. My name is Payam Nahid. I'm the Executive Director of the Institute for Global Health Sciences. And as many of you have had the opportunity to interact with Dr. Mamphela Ramphele this last year, you've seen how she is, in fact, very much a visionary leader and global advocate for human dignity and the human family, as we've learned through her seminars and lectures. So I have some written comments to say. I didn't dare try to memorize them because for me, your stay with us this year has been so deeply impactful on multiple levels personally, that I probably mess it up if I didn't have things written. But I wanted to just sort of say some reflections. So, today's gathering is intentionally informal. This is like a family discussion, if you want. And rather than a farewell, what we wanted to do was to make this a celebration of ideas and relationships and conversations that Dr. Ramphele has inspired during her residency with us. That inspiration, I think, is widely felt. So over this past year, through generous support, as some of you may know, through the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, and specifically Harvey Feinberg, a very generous donation from him, and the foundation allowed us to put into motion a year with Dr. Mamphela Ramphele. And as a model, I hope we can replicate that in the future, because having global health and human dignity leaders like yourself with us during these times really, I think, has played an outsized role on how we've all navigated this last year. So I definitely think it's something we should pursue. You've brought to IGHS a perspective that is both, as I mentioned, deeply personal and also profoundly global. And I think part of that is through your seminars, discussions with students, your writing, which I think a handful of people have seen. I have not had the privilege to read what you've written so far, but look forward to it, then working on your book. You've challenged us constantly to think differently about healing, about leadership, justice, something that we talk about and think about in the everyday exchange we have with the world around us, but rarely act on in the way that we ought to. And you remind us of that. And really what it means to belong to one human family. The most sticky message you've left for me this year was the one human family, the key to unlocking the puzzle of why there are health inequities and justice inequities around the world, and has to be reframed, and that was helpful. You've invited us to consider questions that are both ancient and urgent. How do societies heal? What do we owe one another across generations? How do we reclaim our shared humanity in a world that too often rewards division, exclusion, and extraction? How do we do that? With incredibly forces against us, because the drivers of extraction are things that, frankly, we probably all contribute to. So these aren't abstract questions. They sit at the heart of global health, and they sit at the heart of our mission as an institute. They sit at the heart of the future we hope to help build. And one of the things I've most appreciated about your time with us is your unwavering belief that the future is not something that just happens to us, and that it's something that we can shape together. It takes courage. It requires courage, frankly, right? It's not going to happen without that. But that conjoined with dialogue, curiosity, and a commitment to one another. So today is to celebrate that spirit, to reflect on what we've learned from our time with you, and to consider most importantly, what we will carry forward. Because for us, this is a celebration of a future that we can build, and the why the title is Our Humanity, Our Future. So thank you all for being here. We're going to start with some reflections from those who have had the privilege of working with Mamphela this past year, and then we'll hear from her on engaging in change. And then we will have a lot of time for Q&A and discussion, and we'll have some moderated conversation, again, in an informal setting. So thank you. Thank you very much, Mamphela. Matt?
Hello, everyone. I will try to keep this as brief and hopefully as concise and unembarrassing to me as possible. But the two things I wanted to say, and there is only two things, is about my time with Mamphela is, first thing, how I came to understand what a deeply and amazingly impressive person that she is. I mean, beyond her work at the World Bank, beyond her work at the Club of Rome, beyond being a vice chancellor at a university in Cape Town, beyond all that stuff, beyond all the 10 books you've written, right? Beyond all those things is the first thing is that you put your faith into action. Okay, and now I know a lot of people do that, and a lot of people say that, right? Now, I come from a faith tradition that requires that, right? And as Payam said, you do that with every step you take. You do the things that we all say that we're supposed to do, right? You actually do them, right? So that moral clarity and courage is something I think that I don't see everywhere, right? So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that you had the compassion and the patience and the love to share that with me and my family. And that is also something that I don't get to see every day. She came to my house for dinner a week or two ago, which was all lovely and it was great. It was, she's a friend of mine, so we can sit down and have dinner. But more importantly, she sat there with my son and told him, I've told him things like this. I don't know how many times. He doesn't listen to me. You sat and told him that he is going to be the leader of the world, one of the leaders of the world coming up, right? And that, that blew my mind. And that sort of love and compassion and I think unquestioningly acceptance of people you see, and the ability to see the worth and the value in them is something that I don't know how to thank you for. And probably until at the end of my days, I won't quite understand how I became worthy of accepting that. So I want to thank you. And Payam's right, it's not it's more of a so long, so there you are. Thank you very much.
So I think this is a very hard one to follow, but I will try. So I was told I need to reflect on a year-long working with Dr. Mamphela in few minutes. I don't know if this is feasible. So I might need hours, maybe days, but I still remember last year when I was your resume was shared with me and they were like, your work with her. I was like, whoa. I was nervous, intimidated, as Matt said, the director of the World Bank, vice chancellor of Cape Town University. What should I expect? How do I prepare for that? And there she comes, very kind, very human, very warm. I never went to her house without she cooks for me every single time and just share food and laughter and beautiful sense of just being human together. Over the past 1 year, it was just I think a journey of inspiration, learning, and healing. I worked with Dr. Mamphela on our book, Finding Our Way Back Home, where we just had this endless discussion about how intergenerational trauma transmit. But like, I didn't just learn about like what is intergenerational trauma, but like we had this discussion of like Blackness, colonization, oppression, slavery, humanity. And those are very heavy topics to discuss. But she was able to just talk about them with grace, wisdom, and just sometimes making some jokes about it while we're just trying to see how can we present this in the best possible way so the world can be with us in this. So I learned a lot from her and from her work. But the most important thing that I learned is like how to accept who we are and be proud where we come from, how to understand by the end of the day, it's like we're just part of one big human family, and that what matters the most. So I am really privileged and honored to just work with you, Dr. Mamphela. I know I will miss you dearly, but like I will come visit in South Africa. Thank you so much for your amazing work. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Amira and Matt. And hi, everyone. I'm Andrea DeLuca, and I'm our Deputy Director here. I'm going to be reading my remarks just so I get in what I need to, because I really want to convey this. I'm going to close out this reflection session by sharing the impact that Mamphela has had in my life in her year at IGHS. And when I think about what I've learned from her, in addition to everything that has been shared, one idea stands above all others, and that's connection. And connection not simply as a value, but as a strategy for change. So I first encountered her influence during my training in South Africa in the Eastern Cape. This was the early 2000s. It was a time when many of us were engaged in a struggle for something as fundamental as HIV testing and access to preventative care. What struck me then was the power of people refusing to accept reality as it was, and instead working together to create the reality that ought to be. At the same time that I was in the Eastern Cape, Mamphela was at the University of Cape Town, serving as the first woman vice chancellor of that incredible institution, and demonstrating that leadership can expand what people believe is possible. To spend time with her decades later now has in and of itself been an extraordinary privilege. But what has stayed with me most is a lesson not about authority or position. It is a lesson about connection. Mamphela and I spent some time in our beautiful North Bay and Armstrong Woods together. Among the redwoods, she reflected on the way these remarkable trees endure. Redwoods do not survive because they stand alone. They survive because their roots are intertwined. Their strength comes from connection. Through storms, droughts, climate change, fires, they support one another through an interconnected root system that allows the forest to remain a place of beauty and strength. That image has become for me a powerful metaphor for leadership. Too often we imagine change as the result of one person's vision or action, but the most enduring change comes from building relationships and connecting people to a common purpose. We're so lucky at the Institute to have a mission that calls us all here and to work together. My greatest learning from Mamphela is that leadership is not about standing apart. It is about creating the conditions for connection. And it's through those connections that communities become stronger, institutions like ours become resilient, and meaningful change becomes possible. That is what I'm going to carry forward. It's my commitment to how I will lead going forward, thanks to you and your incredible leadership. So please help me welcome Dr. Mamphela to the podium.
Wow. It's kind of overwhelming. As particularly Matt, with whom I work almost every day, bringing non-problems, which they look so big for me. And then he says, oh, let's just see how that works, with a big smile. So it's not often that I feel inadequate to any task that you throw at me. But today, I'm feeling entirely inadequate about how does one express one's gratitude to all of these people saying, I did this, they're not telling the truth. I have never been to an institution where there's so much care, so much meticulous planning to make sure that everything I needed was available, and that they had people who could hold the hands of this BBT, born before technology. And I mean, I've never been in a place like this. I don't think you guys and ladies and gentlemen and the beautiful young ones, I don't think you understand how precious this Institute for Global Health Sciences is. It's a unique institute, in case you didn't know. I feel privileged to have been allowed to be part of it and to feel the spirit of it. And so I just want to name a few things that stood out. I've never been to a place, I've been on sabbatical in different parts of it. I've never been to a place where I had such comfort and safety. Where I live in Edgewater, my goodness, one of my weaknesses is sleep. I sleep for minimum 8 hours, but I'll take another 2 or so if necessary. And I can do that without worrying. I come from a very violent society, so this is great. And then the easy access to the walks on the pier. My goodness. So whatever little age thingies were beginning to happen, I got the cure. Then, of course, the anchors of this whole institute, these two people, have not only embraced me as it was a duty to do, you could say, no, because they actually loved doing. And Pam, you're going to have to take responsibility for what you enabled that evening in your beautiful home. The conversations led to many things, including leading to a connection that led to a publisher who's now happy to publish my book, but there's still work to be done. So that's the era you created or you committed that. And then, of course, going to your home, it was so amazing. It's so amazing to see it's a long time since I've stayed with young families, and to see that dynamic, I just loved it. And your daughters are something else. They are also going to take on the world. And of course, Matt has already told you about the visit to his home with Jack. Jack is a giant. I mean, and we had such fun. We could have spent another 2 hours talking. And all of that tells me the potential there is out there. We just look at the problems we have, but we forget that it gets darkest just before the dawn. And all these young people confirm to me that the dawn is here. And of course, my beloved Amira. Wow, powerhouse. She is incredible. And it just tells you the leadership that's out there in terms of the future of scholarship, the future of my beautiful continent is in very good hands. So I don't spend a minute being gloomy about what's going on. I know this is a step. We have to go through the darkness to get to the light. And so what has emerged for me, which was kind of vaguely somewhere in my head, it's just how can one speak to this beautiful moment we are in, which is a very painful moment at the same time. And so I came here with the thought that I could say finding our way, times responsible, because the connections of the connections that, yeah, we love what we see, but I think it will be more powerful if you can talk to people about reimagining freedom. Wow! Everything fell into place. And so what Andrea was talking about in terms of the centrality of the essence of who we are, being interconnected, interdependent beings within a web of life. So it's not just those redwoods that are connected, everything in nature. If we were to really be smart, we must spend as much time as possible learning the lessons of nature by walking it, by sleeping in it, by listening to it. And so what I would like to share from this reimagining freedom, we've got to heal by getting rid of the myths that are blinding us to the reality of who we are. And I've identified 5 of those myths. So if you bear with me, I shall start with the one that has already been alluded to. This idea of different races is not an innocent little mistake of pseudoscience. It's a very big deal. And it is a big deal because we allow it, we normalize by accepting this nonsense, because we know, and many of you are either geneticists or connected to genetics, 99.99% of our genes are the same. Now, 0.001% is what can keep us divided. I mean, how does that make sense? It makes sense only in one respect, that it serves a purpose. And that purpose is to make you feel small so that someone can dominate. It's a purpose that is served by this idea of races. And sadly, it comes from some place up north where we were sitting in Cape Town and someone comes and says, "Oh, you are non-European." Hello? What is that? You? It's as ridiculous as that. But my grandfathers, my great-grandfathers didn't question this non-Europeanism until these great unwashed 15 crazy young people said, how is that? The math doesn't add up. 90+% of people were held to ransom by less than 10%. How does that work? The mathematics doesn't work. It works only to the extent that myth blinkers you, not just your eyes, but your mind and your soul. And the day you say, no, I am not a non-European, I am an African and I'm proud. And by the way, I'm a woman and I'm proud. The second myth is that human beings are placed in dominion over nature. I went to the cathedral. I love the Grace Cathedral, but unfortunately, that was a text they read the other day, last Sunday when I went. And I was thinking, I said, you know, it's amazing because people read this and they say, this is the word of God. Well, God lives in us. It can't be possible that he says that we are in dominion over. Someone else wrote. And it is now regarded as truth. But all you need to do is to go to the redwoods and you tell me how you can be have dominion over that humongous. You can't even put your arms around the tree. And this weekend, I was walking in Vancouver in the forest, and because it's rainy, the moths, the fungi are all over every tree, and they create arches that are beautiful. And you have something to do with it. You gotta be crazy. The third myth is that we are utility maximizers. Now, this, the huge schools of economics, that's all they teach people. And where does it come from? Alfred Marshall, some Victorian guy who was trying to cuddle up to the royal family in Britain. How can you regard human beings as utility maximizers? When you look at how life is led, women being pregnant for 9 months, I mean, what utility are they deriving from that? And how are they maximizing? But it is, again, useful for those in dominant positions to say that, to justify why they don't care about what they're doing to the environment, what they're doing to you, what they're doing to all those people that they're exploiting, because they are in the utility maximization business. All right. It can't be a value system that we can live with, because if everybody is utility maximizing, then we have the chaos that we currently have. And then there is the issue of we are born with a selfish gene. Now that is quite amazing, but I haven't worked in a lab. Perhaps you people who have worked in labs have met a selfish gene running up and down the corridors. It's impossible. Human beings are born helpless. I mean, imagine that little baby. If we were all born with a selfish gene, how is that baby? I've also watched wildlife. I love watching wildlife, not only seeing them in the wild. But a deer gets born now. But by the end of 10 minutes after it's born, now that baby, I'm afraid, there's no toddling around. It's lying there for the mom, the family. Somebody must do something. With deers, they can do that, but they still care for one another. So this selfish gene business, I think people, let's just wipe our eyes off these myths. The final myth is democracy. We are told that democracy can only work with regular elections, and of course, in many parts, including in this beautiful country, the land of the free and the land of the brave, that people have to qualify so that they can make the right decisions. Really? But at the same time, they forgot that they've recorded. Your founding fathers said that democracy's business is to protect private property. And at that time, private property looked like this. So how can that be the best form of governance when it was born out of that kind of sentiment? And they even went further and said, elections are inoculation against insurrection. So every time, I mean, now is primary time, everybody is busy. Yeah, you're busy, so you don't do what you should be doing is to ask people in Washington, what the heck are you doing? No, you're busy fighting over who's going to be your representative, in what system, towards which end. So we are all told that Aristotle is the father of democracy. But Aristotle, to his credit, said there are two forms of democracy. The first is this one. And he said, those centuries ago, that it is prone to capture and corruption. Need I prove? Right? But he said there's another form of democracy, or as he called it, the demos, which is about citizens coming together and choosing by selection of those people who put their names into the hat to say, we want to represent our fellow citizens. And then it's like a lottery. So your name comes out, and you might not know anything about the subject that's being, because it was about looking at the question at hand, analyzing, coming up with policy options. And of course, in the process, you get experts who come and help. It was a real engaging process. But if you are there and you can't, you don't understand, you learn. So this is what is called citizen assemblies. And guess what? In my study, courtesy, Paim and all of you, I come across an example of the citizen assembly in two places. One is Kerala. Kerala is the poorest state in India. It's got the highest human development index. It's got the highest participation of women in governance. It's got the highest participation of the so-called scheduled classes in decision-making process. And you are all in this business of global health. They've already made the demographic transition, the poorest. So what does it tell us? It tells us that their system is better than the land of the free and the land of the brave. So that's one example. You say, well, because there was a communist party, and yeah, but the communists are no longer anywhere in contention. It is the people who have decided that this is a better form of government. But what really surprised me is a place in northern Syria where the Kurds and what have you have been lots of hardship. They took the gap. So, this thing about when it's dark just before the dawn, that's when you should take the gap, right? They took the gap with the Assads doing their thing, and they fought, but at the same time, they established a different system. They have communes, and they have towns, and then they have a council. And they have basic rules. This is a Muslim country. 50% women representation at every level of government. Commune, town. And when it comes to the council, they actually top slice the seats in case the people at the bottom don't do the right thing. When it comes there, there's a shot, then the top slice seats are there to make sure that the 50-50-50 remains. And what's happened? They are efficient, effective, and participation and the human relationships have improved. I mean, every day is like a party, like, some of us love party. But they actually do the work. It's one part of Syria that works. So I'm leaving you with this message that I've seen even here at the Institute. I've met, what you're doing with these masters and doctoral students and postdocs. And the fact that you've got not just medical doctors, you've got nurses, I haven't seen it anywhere else. I think you really need to find spaces within the institute to stop and reflect and celebrate what you are doing. It's unique. But then you must harvest the opportunities that it presents. Have these circles of conversations. I mean, you have these people, young people coming from everywhere. I mean, I met some from corners of Asia I've never heard of, and others from even part of Africa that I've never been to. Imagine if we were to have to systematize having circles of conversations at the beginning of each course, and those who were there sharing with those who are coming in. And importantly, I see here there is a little risk for you, right? Because I think there are more people with a bit who look more like me than you in terms of gender. Are you harvesting? That's the question. It was the first time when we had the 10th anniversary, that woman who came from Malawi. It's the first time I see a nurse who's gone through, and now she's this real powerful leader. I think you're hiding your light under the bush. There, the world needs to understand that we are strongest when we leverage the diversity of humanity. That's why all these myths about races, these are people with narrow minds. This institute must be the light on the top of the mountain that can shine through our very trouble. And I have met enough of you to know that the powerful leaders within the institute, you're not even touching the 10% of the power you have. Nothing must be allowed to dampen the opportunities to shine this light about the power of humanity once we are connected, once we leverage the best from our collective wisdom, our collective talents, and our collective knowledge system. I really think you're onto something. But you've got to actually do it. Because I speak as someone who was part of those great unwashed. Once people lose that fear of change, fear of confronting the myths, that's called self-liberation. And that spirit, once it's free, is unstoppable. And I'm afraid you've had to deal with an unstoppable 78-year-old spirit there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mamphela. Yes, beautiful, and a lot for us to reflect. So this next segment is meant to be a conversation with you all. So hopefully you feel comfortable enough to raise some questions. We have microphones, I believe, somewhere. If not, I'll deliver you mine. I'll start with a question, just for you to maybe go deeper with some of the lessons you've given us. First, a presumption that you agree that moral leadership is important, moral ambition. Yes?
We are a moral species. And it's not from studying morality. We're just born that way because if you accept what I say, that we are interconnected, interdependent, the only way a community that is interconnected, interdependent can function is when it is governed and self-governed by morality, ethics. And the values are not about doing good for you. No, it's for me. If I hurt you, think about the times when you have actually gone off your bed on a wrong footing and you kind of say something to you spend so much time saying, oh, but she provoked me. Because something inside us doesn't allow us to treat others with disrespect. Because by doing that, if we really take seriously this one human family story, it's a part of you that you're disrespecting. It's a part of you that you've just hurt. And that's why you see people who are brutal and cruel, those are the most traumatized people. I shall not name somebody that I think you may know lives somewhere where you saw. I'm told he was brought up by a father who was an absolute tyrant. And that damages the capacity to regard yourself with respect. And if you can't respect yourself, it's impossible to respect somebody else. So morality comes from responding to the human and learning more and more to do so, because then you get positive feedback loops.
So to go a little deeper, what gives you confidence that moral leadership, that human connectivity will succeed in shaping our future, given the dark times we live in now, the darkness before the dawn? What gives you confidence that that type of leadership will prevail?
Because I've seen it. When we started and we were medical students, I was 20 at the time, and we were meeting for the first time at this medical school, which was the non-European section of the University of Natal, okay, non-white section. And of course, you felt very privileged to be there because you know what, you were the top students. But after a while, you say, my God, what is this? Right? You start asking that math that doesn't add up. What gives me the confidence is that once we identify that it's not the problem only of the oppressor, it's a permission we are giving them. And there is nothing like failure to self-identify. That's a license. You're giving somebody a license to disrespect you. And the minute you withdraw that license, I mean, it was amazing. It was dramatic when we sent these two of our fellows to go to the principal's office, and it's a Monday morning, and to say, well, Mr. Holt, we are here to let you know that we are no longer accepting non-European section of our medical school. He didn't say what. He said, oh, so what do you want it to be called? All these years, right? You're carrying this negative image of somebody else. And then you say, no, I don't want it. And you say, okay, so what does that tell? It tells you that he did these myths that they're making. They know there'll come a time when they end. And when they end, the sensible people, just like Mr. Holt says, okay, so by when do you want it done? Well, by end of the week. Oh, no problem. We thought we were going to have a struggle. No struggle. And so the power is not just the power of those who will lead. It is the power that emerges from self-liberated energy. I mean, the kids who started the actual physical now liberation on the 16th of June, 1976, these were high school kids. But we, as what we did was to have, and this is something I would encourage you to do, because from our little circle of 15, we then, each one of us, some of us were dropped out, like Steve, and he started mobilizing other campuses. Some of us went to work with poor communities. And from other Black campuses, students who had dropouts went to teach in the schools. And so you spread the word wherever you are. And it's not about preaching. It is about living and engaging and questioning and answering questions. And so the apartheid police were completely befuddled by young kids who had nothing, no guns, no nothing, but just saying, no, you're not going to get gutter education anymore. So despite what we see now in the world, which is so dark, I mean, my own country, having us gone through that process, has gone back into the darkness, because that happens. This self-liberation process and the moral leadership and the courage to lead every day requires continual growth, which is why I love the outdoors. This is why I love walking on the pier, which is why I love reading, and which is why I love people, because you can't grow alone. That is one other thing that you just have to forget about, right? If you don't love people, you are really in trouble, because that's the only thing that's going to make you the wonderful human being that you have been created to be.
This is, imagine it as the family dinner table. We're all sitting around. And those of you who are middlers, you're in the middle of the table. You're meant to connect the left side and the right side in conversation. So yeah, any comments or questions from Mamphela, please put your hand up, or expressions of appreciation. Yeah, Ali.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Mamphela. I'm still denying that you're leaving us. But my question is, there are so many places in the world now, they are in the dark space time. The darkest one is now Afghanistan. The girls banned to go to school for many years. Women are not allowed to go to work, and now women are being arrested in the street. This is the darkest thing I can think about the community. What we can do individually at the institution or at the state, or this is not really normal. This is like the darkest thing I can think happening in 2026. How we can stop this? Some of it related to US and then 20 years being in the country, but how we can stop them to doing this like a real act on women and empowerment and destroying generations that come in Afghanistan.
I happen to know a woman who has started an online school for those girls who can't go to school in Afghanistan. And it's a powerful movement. But what Afghanistan is calling us to do, like my country during the apartheid years, the world at some stage woke up and was supporting the struggle for freedom. I think that we, as the rest of the world, are failing the people of Afghanistan. Even Vietnam, the Vietnam War was always going to be lost by the US. But what added to that were the protests from Berkeley, from other parts of the world. Students in Europe, students in America, standing up and saying, enough of this dominance of people in their own spaces. Unfortunately, Afghanistan was not only dominated by Uncle Sam and whatever the uncles from Europe are called. But also the people, and this is the tragedy of multi-generational trauma, that you then have the Afghans and people traumatizing and re-traumatizing themselves. And this is where the world and our core responsibility for one another, we need to be standing up. People don't talk about Afghanistan in any circle. And unfortunately, the UN, it was an institution that was designed by the powers that be to maintain their power. And now that even the UN is no longer relevant, it's not really even a platform where people used to have these kind of solidarity conversations. But I think we can't say we are waiting for the UN leadership. You are a United Nations in this institute. True. I mean, Iran is being bombed to smithereens, or attempts to, and the world kind of looks the other way. So I really believe that we are not only being called to self-liberation where we are in terms of our countries or our continents, but we have to recognize that we are dealing here with the normalization of global power domination. And it's not going to end with Afghanistan. It's not going to end with Iran. It's going to be everywhere. I mean, the fact that yours truly was wanting, first thing, I want my toy. Canada, come. I think you could be a very nice toy for me. It's the kind of normalization of dominance. So I think one thing we must not lose is our voices to speak truth to power. That's what we did as Great Unwashed, and we never stopped. And I don't think you have noticed me having stopped.
Hi, Dr. Ramphele. I wanted to thank you so much. I'm Camelia Lata, and I have admired during your time here your community building skills that you've described to us in different sessions. Thank you also for lending your expertise when you've spoken with the Global Brain Health Institute, and thank you to IGHS for sharing, Dr. Ramphele. My question is hyperlocal, and the question is, as you've gotten to know the teams at IGHS, as they're all looking towards the future, what would you say in terms of community building within IGHS and thoughts that you have, advice you have? Thank you.
One of the wonderful practices you have are these ward rounds and your meetings, but they're in themes. And all of you are doing exceptionally important scholastic work and work that connects to the field. But what you're not leveraging is the in-between. You know, that's where the power is. So think for a moment about those of you working on, let's say, malaria, having an intentional conversation with those who are focusing on something unrelated to malaria, although ultimately they are related, but making it a way of working. I don't know whether you do this or not. I mean, when people go out for field work, when they come back to, yes, not to report on the details of your scholastic work, but what are the things that struck you when you were out there that you want to share? How? And you can have brown bag lunches. Just sit around. You don't have to, because I think one of the dangers of this place is food. Death by eating. You must be very careful careful about that. You don't have to make a big meal about it. I mean, just sitting and talking and sharing. Really, I think I mean it when I say this institute has not even scratched 30% of its potential. It is an incredibly powerful institution if you start leveraging these interstitial spaces. And also leverage the fact that you come from different places. You can't just expect a culture, an institutional culture to, by some magic, happen. No, you've got to actually create the enabling environment for the celebration of the diversity of cultures. I mean, I'll never forget ever the story of the bicycle. It's there in my mind. And had I sat in Cape Town, I would never know that. I would never have known that, right? You've taught me about how you as an institute are already at high school level promoting young people to, but it's all under the bushel. It's there under the table. It's not known. And I really believe that also in terms of funding, lots of people, they are now younger and younger billionaires who are inheriting these monies. They don't know what to do. But if your things are under here, they won't even think about. So I really think let's just be a little bit more vocal about the good things you're doing.
We'll take that as seriously as we possibly can. I think the challenge is that as academics, as public health practitioners, we're always somehow the genome is lead with humility, and self-promotion isn't part of our training, and there's got to be there's an art to it to do this without being braggadocious, but really showing what we're capable of. And I love that you're encouraging us to do that. We have the ambition. And I think the more we are interconnected as an institute and feel as part of one citizenry, then we can speak with a more coordinated voice around the injustices we see and what we can do about it. Because there's lots of people walking around with a lot of money. Yeah.
So we have a question from online, and I use my old eyes for this. And this is from Mae Forrester. She says, I read about a restaurant in Minneapolis that stopped charging patrons for food. This turned the standard financial structure of a restaurant on its head, and they have made more profits. At the heart of this was a need to use what they had to truly support the community. This makes me ask, what ways could we turn public global health on its head to make a greater impact? Do you have any ideas? What could we do totally differently to improve our work, partnerships, and our impact in global health?
Well, my knowledge is that the Institute was started by Haile Debas to respond to crisis in global health and look at what it has accomplished. But the danger is in becoming an institution that becomes self-absorbed. And that is not because you are shy to ask or you are leading with humility. You become trapped into sustaining yourselves, right? But in doing so, I mean, that restaurant example is a beautiful one. The more you engage with the world out there, the easier it is actually to find. When I became the Vice Chancellor at UCT, and I'm also trained like you as a health professional, but I never followed the rules. So my predecessor used to go, talk like, to fellow gentlemen and so. So I said, this is not going to work for us. Particularly because this is now mid-90s, and they are pressing problems at the universities. We still have a library with what do you call those shelves on sticks that when you take a book and you put it back, whatever, those stacks. Anyway, so I said, I'm not going to, because I was pushed into this vice chancellorship, which is another story. So I decided, no, I'm not going to be pushing myself. Get the university, elects or the demos that by sortition, they chose amongst themselves, and then they worked with the provost who was working with me, and they designed for the first time a vision of the university, right? A world-class African university. They stopped wannabe Oxford, wannabe Harvard. No, you're African. How are you going to define yourself as an African institution that is known for excellence and equity? That's it. And once that was in place, then how do we move from where we are to where we're going? And again, conversations. We had 10 faculties, all because somebody fought with another. So sociology went that way, and okay, that was it. Can we just have a conversation and move from 10 to 6? Now, I have a book document in my hand. So when I make an appointment with you, I come and say, Mr. Knight, I'm here to really invite you to be part of this incredible journey. And I can also say that because I'm not the one driving this. This is the product of the members of this. And I later, before I knew it, with the new library, new. And that's not because I had some magic. No. Is again, start with people must own. Time alone can't raise money for the. But again, that question about how can that lesson of Minneapolis be learned here? It can only be learned by getting people to talk about what they see as possibilities. There are lots of creative people in this room, but we don't know them because we have not created spaces for them to come up with creative stories, right? And of course, they must also feel that they are valued. And the beauty is that I didn't come through the academic route. So I was in no competition with any professor, and my job was to make the professors succeed. And I made that clear to them, and they thought, that's a nice story. No, the story became here. And so I think what that restaurant did is to go back to what Andrea was talking about. Finding the way to connect those in need with those who want to eat and with those who want to make a profit. Everybody. And they don't no longer have to hire what do you call them, security people to guard the restaurant. The whole village is guarding the restaurant because everybody wants this restaurant to succeed.
Okay, you have maybe I asked you to impart one final message for us. It doesn't have to be a new message. It could be a repetition of a lesson or an observation, something you want to leave us with, you want to emphasize.
I just want to emphasize that you really need to reappraise the richness you have in this institute, the power you have in this institute, and the infinite possibilities for you to be a catalyst for change, not only within UCSF, but in the communities you work with, in the families you live in. But you've got to model that by the Institute's own relationships. What was being asked there, the sharing of experiences, really, everybody benefits, everybody becomes better known and better knowing. And so my point, my parting shot is, you are a great institution, but you can be even greater by leveraging the power you have to shape the futures you want. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have my closing remarks as well written. It's just too emotional to try to do this from the hip. Okay, as we come to a close, I want to thank, first of all, everyone that shared your stories, reflections, and aspirations today. Amira, Andrea, Matt. Mamphela, thank you for your wisdom, your courage, and your generosity. This was a common theme. And thank you for challenging us, like you just did in the chair next to me, to think beyond the boundaries that we often, frankly, I think, self-impose. Thanks for reminding us that global health and the work that we do is ultimately about human relationships, dignity, and a shared future. As I mentioned in the opening remarks, one of the takeaways for me is that the future is not predetermined. And then how we each individually activate around that, I think, is the challenge you leave us with, but not to take it sitting down, if you will. It's shaped by the choices we make, the values we uphold, the responsibilities we accept toward one another. It's in that spirit and this incredible year we've had with you that I'm delighted to announce the creation of the annual Mamphela Ramphele Student Lecture. This Mamphela Ramphele Student Lecture will honor you and your lifelong commitment to justice, human dignity, and global citizenship. Your residency with us, you've taught students, you've led seminars, and I know you deeply care about students, and on these themes of returning home and one human family. And we thought that this would be the best way to honor you, but also to look to the future and the future changers. Each year, so the program, just so you all know, an IGHS, a student will be selected to deliver this lecture based on demonstrated leadership, intellectual curiosity, service, and commitment to advancing human well-being across our communities and across our borders. The lecture will recognize someone whose work reflects the values and themes that have defined your life and your scholarship. And they will be receiving a $500 award as part of the lecture prize. So our hope is that this lecture will not be simply an honor of your contributions, but it's really about investing in the next generation of leaders, which is what you really believe in. And people who would be willing to ask difficult questions to show the courage and the ability to overcome the fear that, I know you have a lot of opinions about fear, and we didn't talk about them, but there's a wine reception where you can expand on it if you like. These are the responsibilities that we want to encourage that we hold for the future. So once again, please join me in thanking Dr. Mamphela Ramphele for this incredible year, the lessons we've learned.